One thing I've always been fascinated with when making these Nintendo-based videos are the strange missteps the company makes, which to be honest is a rare occurrence, but when it does happen, it really sticks out like a sore thumb. In this case in today's video, the bad aspects I want to look at are some of the worst levels you'll see across every one of the company's franchises, showing up here because of poor design, annoying mechanics, or unforgiving difficulty that adds nothing to the quality of the game. What constitutes a level kind of changes from game to game, so I'll try my best to make it fit into this video, but if there's some I can't include, then I'll try to explain why. Oh yeah, before I get started, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell button to stay notified when I upload new videos. The very first franchise we're going to look at in this video is of course the company's flagship characters in Mario, where throughout his 21 main series games, there are plenty of awful levels to showcase, but I want to narrow it down to just a few. One game that instantly comes to mind is Super Mario Sunshine, as it contains two of the worst sub-levels in the Pachinko Machine and the Lily Pad Ride that are both extremely annoying to try and complete. The Pachinko Machine fails, as controlling Mario in a confined space with terrible camera angles is a huge pain, and more times than not, you'll miss the coins you're trying to get, as you can't tell where you're going. The Lily Pad Ride also fails, as the controls of using FLUDD as a way to propel yourself forward and steer is very unforgiving, meaning that you'll surely fail a few times, losing many lives in the process. You'll definitely have to abuse the free life near the end of the level, as if your life counter hits 0, then you'll have to go through the painful process of getting Yoshi and keeping him active long enough to get on the boat, then reach the island where the stage is located. On top of that, this game contains Corona Mountain, which isn't only bad because of its poor level design, having to use a boat to cross lava, but also because the name doesn't really hold up in 2021. The next bad Mario level we're going to look at is from the Japanese sequel to the original SNES entry, released later in North America on the SNES Super Mario All-Stars collection called The Lost Levels, where there were a few maze-like stages that were always awful to play. That's because these levels never really took any skill to complete, and without a guide of knowing where to go, were more tedious than fun, as you're pretty likely to run out of time and have to start the level again. I'm almost sure that my cousins ended up writing down the correct routes on a piece of paper, which looking back on it is quite sad, as no game should require you to do extraneous things outside of it to complete it. The last Mario level I want to quickly go over, only because it was such a headache trying to maneuver around in it, is Wing Mario Over the Rainbow from Super Mario 64. What makes me hate this particular course so much is that it revolves around using the wing cap power-up to fly from cloud to cloud, collecting the 8 red coins to gain one of the castle's secret stars. This is an absolutely tedious task, and there were several playthroughs where I intentionally skipped over this level as it was just straight up unfun. The next franchise we're going to look at is one of my all-time favorites in the Legend of Zelda series, where instead of levels, we're going to look at a few terrible temples and dungeons that are just straight up bad. If you're a huge fan of these games, then you'd probably guess you'd see the water temple from the Ocarina of Time for the N64 in this video, as it has one extremely annoying mechanic where you have to constantly pause the game, equip and unequip your iron boots, then unpause to continue. There's really no way around doing this, as you need these boots to properly walk underwater, so this temple always took longer to complete as it should have. At least in the newer 3DS version, they added a quick select button on the touchscreen, which was a lifesaver. But growing up playing the N64 version, I'll never forget the pain I went through. Really, the only other level I want to mention from this franchise is Zelda 2's Death Mountain, as it's full of very tough enemies that will surely leave you frustrated during your playthrough. For those of you who may not know about this specific Zelda entry, as it's one of the least popular in the series, it is a quite different game than every other 2D entry, as it's actually more of an action platformer than a dungeon crawler, where many fans compare its difficulty to Dark Souls, which is definitely saying something. Now, what makes Death Mountain particularly bad is that it has a similar maze feature like we saw in the Mario Lost Levels game, as you have to navigate the correct route to complete the level. There's a reason why this game is so divisive among diehard fans, and quite honestly, this particular stage doesn't make anything better. Next up is the action-adventure platforming series, Metroid, where this franchise doesn't technically have real levels, but instead areas, which will be the focus here. After a bit of research, I learned that a lot of people really dislike Meridia of Super Metroid, mainly due to the awful pacing and sluggish feel this area has. Not only is this entire area a maze, meaning there's a whole lot of backtracking if you don't know where you're going, but there's also a large variety of factors that want to slow you down, including underwater sections and quicksand regions where if you fall into them, you'll have to start from the beginning. If there's one thing that most video game fans can agree on, is that underwater levels, if done poorly, can lead to an absolutely horrific experience, especially if it breaks up the regular flow of the gameplay. The only other one I want to mention is the Skytown Elysia area from Metroid Prime 3 Corruptions, which might be a bit of a controversial addition, as I will admit it's not its aesthetics that makes it bad, it's its poor, uninspired level design. One of the most contentious aspects of this area is its ziplines, that don't really add much other than feeling like a quite gimmicky way of getting around. This isn't a relatively big complaint in comparison to what we've seen or what we're gonna see later on in this video. It's just a place in that game that I felt like I should have enjoyed way more during my playthrough. Although technically Donkey Kong is the first official franchise that Nintendo ever created, he didn't show up as a main character in his own game until Donkey Kong Country for the SNES, where that trilogy's third installment has one of the worst levels of all time called Murky Mill. What makes it so bad is that it revolves around becoming Ellie the elephant, which unfortunately comes with a very negative downside in her being afraid of mice, aka sneaks in this game, making you wonder why you'd even want to transform into this animal buddy in the first place. Every time you encounter one of these mice, you either need to perfectly stomp it or kill it with a barrel. Otherwise, Ellie will run away in fear, which becomes pretty irritating. If this level was designed any better, or used this feature in a more creative way, then it could have been more interesting, but unfortunately what's presented is just awful. Now, in Donkey Kong 64, one of my least favorite levels in that game is Crystal Caves, as it always felt like a chore to play through it due to its poor design and annoying enemies that cause the stalactites to fall and damage you. On top of all this, it contains one of the most annoying golden bananas in the game, where you need to traverse through a maze as Donkey Kong reaching the middle to complete the task. Now, I know what you're thinking. Copycat, another maze level? Well, this one is a bit different, as the walls are moving and rotating and are spiked, which in combination with the game's poor controls makes collecting this banana more difficult than it seems. Don't get me wrong, there are other aspects of this level that make it awful, like its poor lighting or musical theme. It's just I don't think my younger self will ever get over the trauma of trying to get that dang banana. Up next in this video, we're gonna look at the tactical role-playing Fire Emblem series, where some of its earlier titles contain some incredibly horrible levels, mainly due to their absolutely unforgiving difficulty. A level from this franchise that a lot of people online say is awful is the Battle Before Dawn chapter from the Blazing Blade entry for the Game Boy Advance. Why this particular level is so loathed by diehard fans, once again, is due to the fog of war aspects. That's made even worse in this case, as the target you're supposed to protect spawns relatively far away from you at the start, meaning that when you make your way over there, the random pathings the AI enemies take are impossible to predict, meaning you'll surely die a few times in the process. When I was looking over the Star Fox franchise, I was surprised to see that many of the most hated stages were from Star Fox 64, which is a bit funny to think, as this particular entry is considered by many as the series' best. One of these, which honestly was also my least favorite in the game, is Aqua's, which is an underwater submarine-based level, which just doesn't work for several reasons. From the get-go, you can see how dark these underwater sections are, where it's pretty tough to make out what's going on in the distance, which really isn't a feature that fans want in a rail shooter. Also, I absolutely hate the controls of the submarine, as it's insanely unsatisfying to steer, but you do have unlimited rockets, so you at least get a bit of a crutch. Another level from this game I want to mention is the Sector Z or Z Combat Zone, which deviates from the usual rail gameplay, where in this one, you instead just have to protect the Great Fox from enemy ships and Copperhead missiles. This seems like a much easier task than it should be, and in the end, just turns into the more repetitive side of things, resulting in a boring experience. The final level I want to go over is one from the newest Star Fox Zero entry for the Wii U, called the Perilous Expanse Asteroid Field, which is very similar to the Sector Z Combat Zone, where you just need to protect the Great Fox, but from asteroids this time and not enemies. Even though there's been over 20 years between Star Fox 64 and Zero, it seems somehow things never really improved, and fans do want to see something different than just a rehash of that classic version. I did have a bit of a difficult time determining what was the worst level in the Kirby franchise, but I did see a lot of people complain about World 4-8 of Kirby's Mass Attack. That's because there's an entire portion of the stage where the tower you're trying to traverse begins to sway back and forth, meaning it's incredibly easy to miss a collectible or lose a Kirby somewhere on your path. This is made even worse because of the game's camera, which at times doesn't display enough or even the right portions of the screen, causing even more difficulties than there should be. The only other level I want to mention is the Cabbage Cavern from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror for the Game Boy Advance. Not only because it's another annoying maze level, but also because it contains underwater sections which can be very unfun. On top of this, its difficulty is severely lessened if you use the UFO copy ability, which lets you skip entire portions of the level, pretty much avoiding every tough enemy, making things mind-numbingly easy. For the Wario franchise, I decided to split it into two, as the platforming-based Lane series and the minigame-based Where series are completely different entities. On the Lane side of things, a lot of people dislike Wario Land 2's runes at the bottom of the sea level, really for one reason and one reason alone: it's music. Exploring these runes with irritating screeching sounds is not exactly what I want to experience when playing a game. And to be honest, this one is one of the most boring areas of the game, so I don't feel bad including it in this video. From the WarioWare side, I've heard many people seethe about the Right On Dude minigame from WarioWare Gold and Touched, where this one requires you to trace kanji letters and not stray too much outside of the lines or else you'll lose. However, on higher difficulty, there is no visible lines to trace, meaning that you need to perfectly copy the above character, which is tough as the writing detection of the touchscreen is way off. I don't think there should be minigames based on a completely different language and writing style, but then again, what do I know? The next franchise we're going to look at in this video is Mario's dinosaur sidekick, Yoshi, where there's one obvious level I need to showcase as the series' worst in Poochie Ain't Stupid, which is the extra level of World 1 in Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Many people, including myself, dislike this particular stage due to you having to ride Poochie across the molten lava to survive, but he actually moves in the direction you're facing, meaning you constantly have to keep turning left or right to avoid zooming off the stage. Even worse is that this level is an auto-scroller, meaning you have to be very careful on the dog, as this can cause you to easily fall off or run into enemies. I think this concept could be a cool idea, but this level's design seems uninspired and just overall a missed opportunity. The final franchise I want to look at in this video is the multiplayer fighting Super Smash Bros. Series, where there are a few stages that are designed so poorly that I always try to avoid them at all costs. The first we're going to look at is 75M, which is a stage that's pretty much lifted directly from the original Donkey Kong arcade game, but unfortunately, it's not as fun to play on as it looks. That's because the platforms are way too narrow, and there's just too many of them, which makes the experience more chaotic than anything else. There's also flame guys that show up and move around, elevator platforms in the middle going up and down, and Donkey Kong throwing bouncing jacks towards the players that can damage them. When picking a stage to fight on in this game, I try to stay away from ones that can influence the outcome, which is why I really hate this particular one. Another one I really dislike is the Mario Bros stage, which is based on the original arcade versus game layout and carries over the mechanic of allowing players to walk off one side of the screen and wrap around appearing on the other. This, in combination with there being no pits to fall into, meaning its gameplay is drastically different, and the only way to KO someone is to get them to a high percentage, then hit them hard. Although I appreciate the nostalgic feel of what this stage brings, I just don't think this type of mechanic is appropriate for the Smash setting. Now the final one I want to mention from this series is the Great Cave Offensive, as its layout is way too massive to the point where your field of view is so zoomed out that you can barely see what's going on. Situations like these never lead to a fun playthrough, as there's just way too many areas to escape to, which rewards hesitant play rather than just straight up fighting. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course, subscribe to my channel. Also, please follow my Instagram at CopyCatGamer. There I'll upload some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!